What a lad. Well, a few months ago, the rugby world was shocked with the ejection of one of the great English rugby clubs in London Irish. To many, that might just look like another club gone, but the reality of that is that so many players and staff have an incredibly tough transition to do. So for this episode, I've got a guest who loved the club more than anyone I know. He is a very passionate London Irish man. He's also reached the pinnacle of the game, representing the Wallabies. And on top of all the footy stuff, he is just an all-round champion lad. It is the great Ollie Hoskins. Welcome, mate.
Thanks, brother. Good to be here.
Mate, thanks for coming on. Obviously, super gutting to see what's happened over there, not just for London Irish, really, but for the other two clubs as well. Hard times for a lot of players, but thought it'd be awesome to get you on and get a little bit of insight into what it's been like as a player going through all of this.
Yeah, mate. It's been a wild month or so. A lot of chaos, a lot of instability. It feels like I'm almost like mourning a loss of a relationship in a way. Like it's been Irish. Like you were there when I first rocked up. We both rocked up at the same sort of time, and the transition we had from playing in the Champ and going to bloody Rotherham to playing in the Champions Cup this year and doing really well, to then everything just going tits up very quickly. I feel like I'm mourning a loss of a relationship almost, because I was very emotionally attached to the club, and not just me. There's I think the reality of it was 140 odd people involved in the club, in crazy. Players, staff, academy, foundation members, all this sort of stuff, and everyone was just made redundant the other week, and we're just like, wow, I guess you got to scramble and try to find a new job, which isn't the best when 50 players suddenly flood the market at the worst possible time once everyone's got their squad sorted for next year. So it's been a pretty shitty couple of weeks, not gonna lie, but we soldier on to the next one.
Yeah, and you mentioned how many players, 50 players, and that's on top of already another two clubs that have gone under as well. So I read the other day that there's 119 players looking for contracts at the moment. So it's obviously a really flooded market, incredibly stressful for any player who's, all they've got is rugby. That's been their job for their whole life, and now all of a sudden it's been taken away from them, scrambling for anything.
Yeah, it's wild. Like I was speaking to my agent when we had inklings this was going on, we were kind of trying to figure stuff out in case the worst case scenario. And good thing we got onto it early. But he was telling me he had a bunch of boys at Wasps and Worcester, and he was like, the reality of it is I had to have conversations with probably 60-70% of them being like, there's not going to be a job for you. Wow. And the majority of those boys still aren't playing again, unless they want to go and play for peanuts in the Champ or whatever. But the reality of it, if you're a 28 to 30, early 30s outside back or centre or whatever, like the demand for that, it just isn't, unless you're a world-class one. If you're just in and out of the squad, play a few Prem games here, kind of off the bench a few times, like the chances of you getting a job when you've got all these international guys suddenly flooding the market, it's so low. So the reality is most of the boys are just done now, just for stuff completely out of their control. When they had security of, I had 2 years left of my deal at Irish. Me and the wife were trying to set stuff up in London, and you have this financial security, and she just started a new job and all this sort of stuff. And other boys are in the exact same position, and staff members. It's just rug pulled, and all of a sudden you're like, oh damn, I didn't get paid last month. I'm not getting paid this month. If I do get a deal, they start in July, so I'm not going to get paid to the end of July. And you're just trying and London, London rent's not exactly the cheapest thing going around. Right. So yeah, it's been squeaky bum time. I'm not going to lie for everybody.
So how's that worked? You haven't been paid for the last 2 months. Is that from when you found out that the club was gone, or was that before that? And the rest of your 2-year contract is just done now, nothing. Yeah,
the rest of my 2 years is dust, because the club went into administration essentially, so they made us all redundant. And because the club went into administration, they obviously don't have the money to pay boys out their contracts or any of that sort of stuff. So last month we got 50% of our wages. That was a deal that our old owner did to try and extend the deadline for them to get this other deal over the line. And then, so obviously then this month, nothing. And then boys who have managed to secure a deal won't get paid again until end of July. So it'll be pretty much 2 and a bit months going with nothing, and then 1 month on half pay. So yeah, and a lot of boys, you know how rugby is. The majority of you have the upper echelon of guys earning good money and who will be sweet and have savings put away, and then there's like a lot of I don't think fans and stuff understand the reality of pro footy is like the majority of boys who are in squads, who are squad players, who are in and out of teams, are like maybe saving a little bit, but a lot of them are living paycheck to paycheck sort of thing. And then this comes around when you're in London and you got a family and guys have kids and shit, and it's like, bang, sorry, here's half your wages and then nothing. And it's just like, it's brutal, man. It's brutal.
Mate, that is so tough. And have you heard from any of the players? Like, what's the majority of these guys doing who haven't picked up a gig?
Yeah, we've still got like all our WhatsApp groups going and stuff. And it's weird, like on our London Irish group, there's just been boys posting stuff about transitioning out of rugby, work experience opportunities. It's just like, and all these boys, obviously, like 4 weeks ago, they had deals signed and they're like, yeah, I'm playing for the Irish the next couple of years and stuff. And then all of a sudden, a few of the boys I'm speaking to have gone and done work experience in London, in the city and stuff. Other guys are still trying to find a job. Some guys are trying to hold out and, you know, wait for an injury during the World Cup or something and hopefully get a gig that way. But yeah, it's just, it's so much instability. And as you know, like the financial stress of it all is like, I feel for so many boys that are like, I'm lucky. I was lucky in the fact that I've been at Irish for a while, and I played international, so like I've got a bit of money put away, but like London eats away at that pretty quick. But there's a lot of boys, especially with us, who just wouldn't have more than a month's bills in the bank, and then now they're just like have to take what they can get or try to figure something out. I feel for them. It's brutal, especially the staff. Like, you know, the staff members, like the guys who are in the media team or doing ticketing and all that sort of stuff. They're even in worse position than us. Like, and I know there's people worse off in the world, and like I don't want to sit here and act like it's a big sob story, but the reality of it is that like guys are a lot of boys will be up shit creek right now.
And coming off the back of probably the best season for London Irish in a long, long time too. Did you pick it? Did you know this was in the pipeline, or how'd you find out about it?
I mean, there was like, I know Mick, old owner, he came out pretty early in this season being like, oh, I want to sell the club, which I thought was just like, you know, owners want to sell the club, that kind of thing, and they're not just going to turn it to dust. But yeah, that was kind of earlier on in the year, and I know that some boys, when they were renegotiating like in the normal sort of time frame, like say a season, contracts go from like July to July over here, and usually if you're negotiating for the next season, you kind of start chatting around November, around Christmas time, sort of, and then you get deals done early in the year. And I know some boys were like asking heaps of questions then about like this long-term stability of the club, and I was like a bit shocked when I heard that. I was like, oh, of course we're sweet. Mick just wants to sell it and we'll be fine. And then we got like inklings of this American people buying the club, and everyone was like, okay, sweet. He's got a deal. We're just sorting out the logistics of it. And then we didn't really like know anything was properly up until there was probably like a month before we got our pay got delayed. There was like this random article that came out in the papers over here saying that like Irish players may not get paid this month. And I was actually away we had a week off, and I was like away with the wife and chilling and stuff. And I woke up at like 7 a.m. My dad had sent me this article being like, oh, were you getting paid? And I was like so confused. And actually, like, I feel bad now. I kind of like snapped at my dad, being like, Dad, I'm on holiday. Stop sending me this fake news. Like, piss off, mate. now I look like a real dick. But yeah, that was like the first sort of inkling. And then Irish came out and said, no, this is Mrs. Bollocks, and they paid us and everything was sweet. And then the month after that, we usually get paid like the night before the last day of the month, and it was a Thursday, and we came into training on the Friday, and no one had been paid, and everyone was like, oh, it's a bit weird. Well, what's going on? And then we kind of just like went through the day, and then before we went out for our field session in the afternoon, our like CEO brought us in for a meeting and was like, oh yeah, we're waiting for monies from the US. Sorry guys, pay is going to be delayed. And then just like, we had a little chat about it, and then just like cracked on with the day. And everyone was like, what the hell? And then we had like a team meeting. And I remember the coaches like put on this like, I think they knew it was coming. They kind of put on this straight after that meeting. We had this like team like quiz thing to try and up the mood and like to get some laughs. And then we like went out and trained, and it was just, it was so weird. Like, sorry, mate, you're not getting your wages today, but go out and like do a couple of live scrums, and then just like go.
We'll give you a quiz.
Yeah, we gave you a quiz and a few live scrums. Let's go. It was just it was such a weird vibe. And then we were like leading into our last game of the year, and we hadn't been paid like the whole week going into that last game. And then the day before, we were like advised to hand in these like contract breach notes and all this sort of stuff. And then I think that kind of prompted them to our current owner to actually pay us. And then we got paid the day before the game, and everything went on, and we got told that this deal is going to get done in the next month, and everything's sweet. But yeah, it didn't. That didn't eventuate, unfortunately. So we got one last pay to finish off the season. Then we went into off season like normal. We had our exit meetings, everything we'd planned for the next preseason, all that sort of stuff. And then obviously, just like we were all meant to be on our off season break, and it was just like every other day having meetings about the club going under, and on your phone to your agent every day. And it was just like the least relaxing break of all time. Like
I bet.
Yeah.
So how did they break the news to you eventually?
Mate, I feel like in a way, our owner stopped like giving us pretty much any info after a while, because every time he'd give us info, we'd have like a players meeting, and then it would be in the media like 15 minutes later. Some boys obviously telling their agents like bang, getting on the phone to I don't know who.
True.
So Mick stopped giving us any info after a while, because I don't think they wanted stuff to get leaked, and obviously it was making Irish look bad and making these US people look bad and all that sort of stuff. So we literally until the actual deadline, like until 5 minutes before, none of us had like heard anything, and we just had like a sort of whole staff, players, everyone jumped on a Zoom, and even then, like our CEO, who was kind of like, he's an employee as well, so I felt a bit bad because he was just kind of like the shooting the messenger. Every time he'd come up and speak in front of us, boys were just like grilling him. This poor bloke, he'd stand up and just be like, I don't have any news. I'm just relaying what I'm getting told by people, and he was obviously the face of it, and boy, he was just getting grilled by everybody a bit. So he hopped on this Zoom. And he was like, "No, I think there's still hope. Like we're still good." And literally, I was looking at my watch, and like the deadline was at like 8 p.m. and it was like 7:59. He's like, "No, we're good. We're gonna do this." And then we were on the Zoom, and one of our coaches put in there like, "Oh, what do you have to say about this statement that just got released?" And he like sat there and was like, "Oh shit!" Like, and then he just sat and read this entire statement, which at that point I was just like lost my head, and like put it on mute because I couldn't listen to it because it was like I was just like, "Oh wow, I've just lost my job." And like, I just like turned the camera off, put it on mute, was like crying and stuff because obviously I loved playing for this club so much, and he was like reading out the statement saying how we all just got suspended and it was just like so overwhelming. Like the players' chat was popping off as this Zoom was on. Everyone was just like, oh, it was just like looking back on it. I'm sure I'll look back on it in a couple of months and it'll be comical, like the way it all went down, because it was just honestly it was like a soap opera. Like you couldn't write a script, whereas we just got promised thousands of times. Sorry, we got promised thousands of times that shit was getting done, and it just like never did. So it was. I'm sure in a couple of months it will look back and be like, I can't believe that happened. But at the moment, it's still so fresh. It was so weird, man.
Oh, mate, you might have to make the money back by doing it. Netflix series.
you could make a doco.
You
could make a doco about it. It's like it was just I don't know. It was just a debacle, mate. The whole thing. It's like I'm not naming and shaming anyone. It's not. I don't know if anyone specifically is to blame or whatever. I just think we were all always under the illusion that thing was going to get done, and even even literally with a minute left, everyone was like, "Yeah, well, this is getting done. We're sweet." And then it was just like bang. So like, even though I was in the process of like prepping for if the worst case scenario, I don't think I ever fully believed that it was going to come. And then when it did, it was just like the realization hits you like a ton of bricks, and you're just like, I don't really know what to do right now. It was just like such an emotional couple of days, honestly. Like, I think people who know me, like I wear my heart on my sleeve. I'm very like an emotional bloke. I don't mind having a cry and stuff. And I was like I just like got off that Zoom and I was just sitting in my room. My wife was at work, so I was literally like in my bed by myself, just like sobbing. And my dog ran upstairs and was like licking me and stuff. And I was like, gave my dog a cuddle, and I was like, oh god, this is just wild.
All right. So then, what's your next steps from there? You get told the news.
Yeah,
you're in your bed crying with the dog licking you. So how do you get back? What's the next step?
God, yeah, I had a Five Guys because I was like, I need some dopamine. I was like, I deserve a burger right now. So I was just like, wife got back from work and we both were just like kind of debriefing, and obviously like it's just as stressful for your families. Like I felt like I had no control in this scenario, whereas like I can at least still kind of work with my agent and figure out what I'm doing next if I can get a job. Whereas like my wife is just has to sit there and be like, oh, I guess she has literally zero control of what goes on. So like it's so stressful for her, and we're both just like trying to figure out and process what happened. And then like we just had a weird night, and then next day straight away onto the phone to the agent and trying to get stuff sorted out, and it's just like, but as you know, everyone just floods the market at the same time, so it's imagine for other clubs they were like, let's go, I can get good players on a big old discount here, absolute bargain hunting. They're going around the marketplace just being like auctioning us off, I imagine. But even then, because like other clubs, the salary cap at the Prem went down for this next year to like compensate for COVID, so clubs have even less money to spend, and then most of them have obviously got their squads filled up, so boys that want to stay around in the Prem, like the only realistic sort of thing is if clubs have injury dispensations. So I think the way it works is if someone has a long-term injury, you can like use whatever money they make and you sign someone else in the same position, sort of thing, outside of the cap. I think that's how it works. Something to do with that. So like boys who are getting deals or have got deals are mainly due to other clubs having long-term injuries. And if clubs don't have injuries in your position, it's kind of like you're forced to either move overseas or you're up shit creek, sort of thing.
So what were your options? Obviously, like you say, negotiation power is pretty low.
Yeah.
What were your options? Was it ever thought of you returning back to Aussie, or was it always the UK?
I had some chat, or not me directly, but my agents had chats with a few Aussie teams, and that was definitely an option. But as you know, like the Australian contracts are from like December or November. I was kind of here in June. Needing employment. If I was going to go back to Oz, I needed to find something to cover me for this next 6 months before I go back. And then it was just all this logistical stuff of within a couple of days, going from thinking I'm in London for the next 2 years to, if I move back to Oz, having to tell my wife I'm moving over the other side of the world and organise chucking my dog on a plane and all this sort of like all this stuff. Like during this process, it was funny. Like you speak to so many people and they were just like, oh, that's horrible, but just go to Japan or just go to France or just go home. And I was like, there's a little bit more to it. Like I know we're footy players, but like we actually do have a life outside of rugby, and just like moving over the other side of the world isn't just like as simple. If I was like a single bloke as I was when I moved over here, didn't have any dependents or whatever, it would just be like, this is whatever. I'll just go chase the dollar. But it's like you have to think about stuff in a bit more of a holistic sort of way. So I had I chatted to a few teams back home. We looked in France, a few teams in the UK and stuff. But so I'm sorted now. So I signed with Saracens, which is a good thing for us, me and my wife and stuff. Like allows us to stay in London. They're obviously an awesome club. Like they put you in positions, like they've got a track record of developing players into world class players. Puts you in a good position to win some of the biggest trophies in the world, obviously. So, apart from this year with Irish, we haven't been incredibly on-fieldly successful. Apart from those massive champs, we've won the championships, me and you, mate. Playing bloody Yorkshire Carnegie at the Madstad, one of the great days.
Memories.
So that was I don't know, just weighing up stuff holistically. Like me and my wife have such an awesome life outside of rugby in London. We got like a awesome friendship group that have nothing to do with footy, so I can like really disconnect from rugby. Like it's a big thing for me as I've got older, having that sort of well-rounded self-identity and being like, I'm a rugby player, which is a portion of who I am as a bloke, and then also having all these other aspects of my life that are really important to me off the field have helped me deal with what's going on right now. I feel like if this has happened when I was like 25, 24, 25, I would have been like broken because I was just Ollie Hoskins, the rugby player. I didn't have much else to my identity. Everything I did was just footy. Whereas now I've got like great mates outside of rugby. I've got things that bring me joy outside with my marriage and my dog and all this sort of stuff. Whereas like everything, obviously professionally, rugby was just crumbling around me. But I had all these other pillars that were still sweet. So I had to kind of prioritize that in my decision making here. Whereas I could have tried and, make up financial losses by chasing the short-term dollar. Like there was an option for me to go to France on like a World Cup joker sort of thing and that would have been awesome cash, but then I'd be in the same position in December and probably forced to move back to Australia or just be unemployed and wait for another gig and then be in the same sort of instability. So having that sort of stability outside of footy was really big for me. So we could stay where we're living and I'll just commute up to North London to get to Sarries, and it allows my wife, who literally just started a dream job probably 2 weeks ago. She was working in the corporate London grind for a couple of years and she quit that and spent the last year training to be a yoga instructor, and she just passed and just got a gig at a yoga studio and building up clients and stuff. And then I was like, sorry, love, we may have to ship you off somewhere. So there's all those things you have to think about. So, because obviously Kendo, he's now at Sarries. So chatting to him, I know a few people there. They're like great people. I went up and did a medical the other week and met all the staff, and they're awesome. And I know a few boys who play there. And yeah, it's just like, for me, I think these next 2 years are really about like developing as a player and enjoying a new environment, and having the stability off the field helps me go there and just like rip in and try and, add to the group and become as good a player as I can. And then I'll be off contract when I'm 32, and then I can focus on potentially trying to make up some of the lost money that I've had to cop now. But there's just so many other things that I had to think about, and Sarries ticked like every single box in that sort of agenda. So I'm really happy, man. I'm excited.
Mate, Sarries, there's worse clubs in the world than playing for Sarries. Like exactly. You said, one of the most successful clubs really in the game, to be fair. Yeah. So it's going to be awesome for you to experience that. How far is that commute for you?
Probably on a good day, if I leave early enough, it'll be just over an hour. If I get caught on traffic on the M25, it could be a little bit longer. So it's going to be an adjustment, because obviously I live in Richmond now. To get into Sunbury's 15 minutes, 20 minutes max. So yeah, it's all right. I'm already up with the dog early, so I just walk in and then hop in the cub just before 7 o'clock, and hopefully get there just after 8. And then it's going to be a change in lifestyle. It's just like one of those things, but it's the most sort of stable option when it comes to off-field stuff, and then also probably the best place for me to progress as a player and be in such an awesome environment. It was kind of once they sort of came to the table, it was pretty much a no-brainer for me. I was all signs sort of led there, and yeah, I'm excited, mate. Like when you're in an environment for so long, I've been at Irish for 7 seasons now, and I came there super young, and I came there at like 20, just turned 23, and now I'm 30 and a bit, and developed a lot as a player and also a bloke off the field. Like you can kind of go into weeks or seasons knowing exactly what's happening. I've been there for so long. I know exactly what I before they even sent out the schedule, I know exactly what we're doing on a 7-day turnaround, exactly what we're doing on a 6-day turnaround. I know exactly the content of the sessions. So like you can almost get through a week without really having to mentally engage yourself at 100% almost ever, and then you just lock in for game day and go. Whereas like being in this new environment with new coaches and new perspectives and new players and all that sort of stuff, I feel like it's going to really like stimulate me mentally, and definitely going to make me a better player, because I'm going to view the game from a different perspective and stuff that I had never really had, because I've been with the same coaches for so long. And I loved my time at Irish, and I was signed up for 2 more years. I wanted to stay there, but this is going to definitely stimulate me and drive me to become a better player, just by thinking of the game and viewing the game from different perspectives and stuff, and playing with different people. So yeah, it's good. It's going to be an awesome move, man. I'm really excited. It's kind of made. I'm one of the lucky ones who's got a gig, and this is like the best outcome it could have been for me, in all honesty. Awesome.
I'm stoked for you. And where did the Wallabies fit in with all of this? Like, obviously you've played for the Wallabies now. Where's the conversations there?
I spoke to 2 super teams in Oz, and they were both pretty keen to have me on board, but I never had any sort of communication with AIU or Eddie Jones or anyone. So like if I was going to go back home, that probably would have been like a big thing for me. I'd only sort of make that massive sort of transition, because like even though I'm Australian, like, but I've got most of my independent adult life has been in the UK, so I very much view London as home now. Like I came here as I was 22, but I was still a kid. Like I was living at home in Perth when I moved over. So I've literally done all my sort of maturing outside of rugby and building relationships and friendships and all that sort of stuff in the UK. So I very much view this as home. So I viewed like a move back to Oz as more of a massive transition than most people would think, going like, oh, go back home to Oz. But it's like, I haven't been there for all my adult life. It doesn't really feel like it is home, but it's not really where I've got my roots down. Like my plan is to be in the UK after rugby. I'm going to stay up here and stuff. So unless there was that sort of communication, I'm obviously not going to get a complete guarantee that you come back, you're playing for the Wallabies, but like, unless there was that sort of communication or maybe something from their end, going back there on a whim and uprooting my entire life on a whim that I might play for the Wallabies a couple more times is like, it was something I weighed up, but it was just such a massive transition for me and the family and stuff that, I don't know, I just felt like this was the best move for us, especially. They're not ruling it out in the future. Maybe after this 2 years, I play well for Sarries and I've got communication with the Wallabies and all that sort of stuff, and maybe that's an option. But for right now, I just felt like there was just so much chaos going on in our lives that I was like, I needed to just lock down something that I can control, is like geographical stability for the wife and stuff. And for me, it just kind of that's what really drove this decision. That like I consider going back, but without like a firm conversation with Eddie or anyone in the ARU, I was a bit less like, it's just too much instability to go back on a whim.
Yeah, makes total sense. Although it would be good to see you back in that front row with your good mate Dave Parecki in the Wallabies
Rex.
jersey, mate.
I was, as soon as this happened, of course, he texted me being like, "Oh, I think the tires need a tight headlight. Let me get on to my boy." I was like, "Thanks, David, looking out for me. That man is unbelievable."
Mate, but I am keen to hear, obviously you said that you got to London Irish, 22. I'm keen to hear a little bit about that journey before you got over there, growing up in Perth. What was that like for you?
It's a good place to grow up as a kid. I mean, so I'm youngest of three boys, and my parents are both born in the UK, and they moved over when they were very young. I think my dad would have been 20, mum 21, and they moved over to Perth. Sorry, they moved to Brisbane initially, and then moved over to Perth and had me and my brothers. And Perth is not a rugby city at all, so it was kind of like my dad was rugby nuts, so he just like forced it down our throats. But like for me, I when I was around, my brothers played, and I was always kind of grew up on the sideline of a rugby field when I was younger, and yeah, it's just it's a great place to grow up, mate. Like, I don't know if you've ever been to Perth, but it's very much just like a quiet, nice family sort of environment, great beaches, that sort of thing. And yeah, so I was just played footy there and got into the Western Force was like my life back in the day. So the funny thing is, like, when I can't remember the year, it might have been 2003 or something, 2004 that the Force came in to Super Rugby. I can't remember the exact time, but like my mum and my brother like organised when there was like a bid between WA and Melbourne to get the team. My mum and brother organised this like enormous supporters rally and got like 25,000 people to Subiaco Oval at the time to make this giant human sign saying like Super Rugby for Perth. And like it got like massive news headlines everywhere, and that like apparently was actually quite a big thing to get the team over there. So like my family was like massive Western Force super fans back in the day. I remember like now it's kind of cringe, but I had like all the guys' jerseys up in my room and stuff, and then I was like in the academy and I ended up playing with a bunch of them, and I'd like took them down because like, I can't be playing with like Pet Cow when I've got his like signed jersey up in my room and stuff. So that was. So I was like a super fan. I go to every game and I just like loved it.
Yeah.
And then to go through the academy and play for them was just like, I've made it in life. And I thought I was just going to be on this like linear trajectory of rugby where like Perth Perth club rugby and school rugby obviously isn't at the highest level. So I was just like the big guy, sort of big fish in a very small pond. And I was just like smooth sailing. I was always the best player on every single team I went on. Like every time I went on the pitch, I was one of the best players. Yeah. And then I got to Super Rugby and I played pretty early. I think I debuted when I was like 20 as a tight end, and I was like, oh mate, I'm flying. This is just going to be this linear trajectory. I'm played when I was 20. I'll be starting for the Force next year. I'll play 100 Wallabies caps. I'm going to play for the Force forever, be the best player in the world. And then I hit Super, and like I played number 8 most of my teenage years, and then I moved to tight end quite late, and I could get away with being a shit scrummager in like Perth club footy or like some sort of, even when I played Aussie 20s and that sort of stuff, like I was average scrums, but it just never was a priority for me. Like I just like, as long as I played well around the park and was carrying and having fun, then I was like, I'm the best player ever. And I got to Super Rugby and I was just like, oh, I'm actually pretty shit. And it was just like a massive reality check for me. And it humbled me quite a lot. And then the coach at the time was still picking me. Like I think I played 26 Super games and every single one of them was off the bench. I didn't start a single one. Yeah. And the most minutes I ever played was in my debut. I played like 26 minutes. And I think the coach was like, yeah, we got this kid. And then even him was probably like, where's your like scrum development going? And my minutes just slowly dwindled as the years went on. Until eventually, like in my 3rd season there, he just stopped picking me. And then then I was like, oh, damn. Because I had some stinkers in my time, and he'd always pick me because I was like, yeah, I'm going to get this right. They're going to get this scrum thing right. And he'd just keep picking me. And then in that 3rd season, I just don't think he just wasn't, which I look back on it now, it's totally justified. I just wasn't a good scrummager at all. It wasn't my focus. Like even when I had bad games, like I remember sometimes my coach blowing up at me because I'd have like good games around the park, but I'd give away like 3 or 4 scrum penalties. I'd come off the pitch like smiling, being like super happy and shit. And he just obviously I just don't think my priorities just weren't there at set piece. So I just didn't. As long as the kind of we won and I played well around the park, I'd just be super happy. Yeah. And then that 3rd season obviously just didn't progress in my scrums, and he just didn't pick me the whole year. And then I was like, oh, damn, maybe I need to sort something out. And then they had a conversation that they're not going to keep me on. And that like proper knocked me for 6 because I'd obviously been like this super fanboy for my entire career. Yeah. And then all of a sudden they just told me, see you later. And I was like, oh, damn, this is my first proper like hurdle in my career where I realized that like, shit, I'm not actually that good. I got a lot of work to do if I really want to be the player that I thought I was going to be. Yeah. So yeah, I then had a conversation with my dad about moving over to the UK because I had the passport, so I was English qualified, so I didn't count as a foreigner and stuff. So it was quite easy for me logistically to get over there. And yeah, that conversation was. Initially, the idea was to try and get a gig over here and come for 2 years and develop my scrummaging. Like, my dad's always been real honest with me, and he was just like, yeah, you need to get better at X, Y, and Z. And there's probably no better place to do it than up in Europe, when traditionally, like, the set-piece game over here is a lot more attritional. Especially back then. I don't think the case anymore. I think Super Rugby's come so far in terms of its set-piece and stuff. But back probably 7-8 years ago, there's a big divide between the two. And then I spoke to a few teams, and every team I spoke to was just like, yeah, we love your game around the park, but I don't think you're good enough to scrum up here. And I was like, oh, everyone's gonna have the same sort of idea. Yeah. Like I remember they were making me. This one team made me like put together a compilation of like my training session scrums, not even game ones. They wanted to see training sessions of like, and a whole training session. They didn't want me to pick out the good scrums I got. They'll like send me clips of like your unit sessions and stuff. And I had to put together this compilation, and like half the scrums I was getting dicked in this day. So I was like, this is not going to go over well. So I'd like send them off, and they'd be like, thanks, but no thanks. And I was like, oh, this is fucked. And then I got an offer through from Scarlett's in Wales. And like, I remember Googling the town, and it's in Llanelli, which is, I only know how to pronounce it now because my wife is Welsh and double L makes that sound. And I was like, where the hell is Llanelli in Wales? And I was looking at this tiny little town, and I was like, this is so rogue. It just looked grim. And that I was literally like I was like a day away from signing that and being like, this is my only option to like go develop. It'll probably be good for me. It's just going to be a massive lifestyle change. And then London Irish came through with a gig, and I think the DOR then was Glenn Delaney, who's a Kiwi man. Yeah. So I spoke to him on the phone, and he was like, yeah, I think I can develop you. Like, we obviously love every other part of your game, but you need to develop at scrum time, and I think this would be a good environment for you to develop. And this is when Irish was. I don't know if you heard the same thing. I don't know when you signed with Irish, but they were still in the Prem, and it looked like they were sweet.
Time, definitely.
Yeah. And I remember I signed with them and been like, I was looking at all the Prem teams and be like, this is going to be sick. And then I remember they went on this mad losing streak towards the end of the year. And I was just watching it go down, down, down. And they had the game. They needed to win against Newcastle. It was like the winner of this game gets relegated. Right. And me, my brother, and a few of my mates got up at like 2 a.m. and found this shitty stream of Irish v Newcastle. And I'll never forget. I didn't know him at the time. You know Tonksy, Greg Tonks.
Yeah.
And I remember he threw an intercept and they scored. And to like pretty much lose the game, and I had no idea who he was or anyone. I was yelling, "Fuck you, Greg Tonks!" I was just like effing and blinding at the TV because we just like now instead of playing the Prem, I'm going and playing Cornish Pirates away. But in all honesty, that was probably the best. Like, I need to go and thank Tonksy for that because it was probably the best thing for me because I was so not ready to scrum with the Premiership when I first rocked up. Like, when I did rock up to the UK, it was such a shock to me set piece wise. I remember our first day, I came and we did the yo-yo test, and like I remember I ran like a 18 something in the yo. All the other front rowers got out at like 15, like 16 was at max. I remember I ran like a 18.4 or something, and I beat like I got pretty much the same as like Jacob Atkins and all the other like the inside backs and stuff. Yeah. And everyone was just looking at me like, what the hell's going on? And I was like, my priorities were just like, I want to be lean, I want to be fit, I want to run around the pitch, and I was just like, I think I was at like 115 kilos or something.
Yeah, so even at this point, you were still feeling like that. Like, even though you'd left the force, you'd been sick because you weren't a scrummager, your priority was still to just ball play. You're a loosie, You're a loosie.
I just believed I could learn this scrummaging thing, but I just was like, I'm gonna keep all the other parts of my game. And then, I came into that preseason and I was still lean and just like, I was actually making scrums a priority, but I just like, I don't know, I didn't have the right profile for it essentially. Yeah. And I remember those first couple of unit sessions I had with George Skivington and those boys, and I just was like, it fucking smoked me. I remember we're doing these like long 45-second like isometric scrum holds, and sometimes they'd like, without telling you, they'd add an extra couple of back rows, so it'd be like a 10-man scrum against 8, and I'm sitting there, this like young, lean tight head just sitting there who's never done anything like this. And I remember there was a few of them where I was in there and I'd come up and I'd just be so lightheaded and I'd be like stanky legging around the place, and all these blokes looking at me like, who is this kid? And I literally get out of these scrums and I couldn't even breathe, and like the black circles were coming in, and I was like, I'm going to pass out. And I was like, just don't pass out. I closed my eyes and propped myself up against the fence and try and stay conscious. So it was just like the biggest shock to my system. Yeah. And then like, that's why I said the champ was probably the best thing for me, because it allowed me to, that first year, it allowed me to like progress pretty slowly in a way. Like some of the games we played, like, I don't know if you probably, because when I came in, they had Franksy who was starting at tight head. So I was like kind of second or third choice tight head coming in. So I played some of the champ games were gritty, but I played some of the real gritty games in the B&I Cup. You remember, you never played the B&I Cup, I bet?
Mate, I had a few.
So I remember playing like Ospreys A, which is like their like reserve team full of their academy kids in Neath, which is a small little Welsh town. And it was like 7 people watching, and it was just horrible. And I remember playing that game, and it was one of the first games I actually started for Irish, and I was getting bummed by this like academy little Welsh kid. And I was like, I've got like 30 games of Super Rugby. Like my last game before I came over here, I think we played the Blues at Eden Park, and I was like, what is going on? I come here, I've done this whole preseason, I'm like, finally I'm going to get this scrumming thing, and I was still getting done by these little kids who probably are part-time. Just the Welsh kids, and I was like, this is just like never clicking for me. So it kind of just let me sort of fail in silence without being on the big stage of the Premiership.
So how do you learn the dark arts of scrummaging? How do you get there eventually?
getting bummed so much,
Is
and
it?
actually like making it. And then I don't know, it humbled me even more by getting done by part timers essentially.
Yeah.
It just like it humbled me a bit more and allowed me to kind of really realize that I have to put most of my energy and focus into this aspect of my game, and realize that the rest of my game will come naturally, because it's like that's the part that I've focused on for so long, and my skills and that sort of stuff, and my engine and stuff is just going to be there. And until I really focus on this as being actually swap my priorities about this is what I need to focus on to have a long, successful career and achieve what I want to. Then that shift sort of came in my mind, and I remember Kendo bringing me in and being like, I want you to put on 10 kilos. And he told me that initially, and I was like, oh yeah, I'll do it. And I just didn't really do it. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to put some weight on and turn into a Northern Hemisphere prop essentially. And I got up to like 126, 127 kegs.
Sure, yeah.
And really sort of like locking in unit sessions and when going into a game, all my notes and everything and all my focus and all my analysis would just be around scrum, because I'd be like, the rest of the stuff will come. I really started putting a focus on it, and I started to see some progression towards the back end of that year. And then I had a few good performances towards the back end of the year where I scrummed pretty well. But still, I'll still come off the bench. I remember in that final promotion game at the Madstad, I'd sat for 80. I didn't get on the pitch, and I was a bit like,
"Oh, really? Did Franksy go 80?"
Franksy went 80, but then at the end, I think, yes, that's what I mean. Which fucked me even more, because I thought I'd get on at least the last 10 and be on the field when we won it. Yeah. And then Franksy went and punched some bloke and got red carded, and I was like, I guess I'm sitting for 80.
It was a couple of decent swings too.
I know, mate. Franksy can throw, so he punched someone, and then I sat for 80, and I was like. That was kind of like the rest of my season. I come off the bench and get to have a few good sort of better scrummaging performances, and then we went into the premiership year, and they brought in Petrus Duplessis, who's like a scrummaging specialist. So I started that season not getting picked. So that was like another thing. I was like, God, I've got to work even harder now to try and just get back on the bench, and then maybe try and become a starter. And then Petrus was massive for me. He was like a scrum coach and player essentially. I think that's also why they brought him in, and he taught me a lot. And then I can't remember who, but I started the first couple of games not getting picked, and then someone got injured and I was on the bench for a few games. And I think there was another. I can't remember. I think Franksy might have got injured for a little bit or something. And I started a few premiership games and actually went all right. And then. I kind of just, the back end of that season, I think when Franksy came back, they moved him to loosehead to accommodate me starting at tight head, and I was like, oh damn, this is actually starting to fall into place a little bit. So I started, I think, the last half of that season and really sort of found my groove a bit and was playing well around the park, and scrums are going well, and I was scrummaging against all these guys who I'd seen play internationally and stuff, like scrummaging against Joe Marler and Gange and all these sort of blokes who I'd seen. And I was holding my own against them. I was like, oh damn, I can actually. It was kind of like a massive confidence boost for me, being like, I can actually do this.
Yeah.
And the back half of that season went really well, apart from the fact that we got relegated again, and I was straight back down in the champ where I belong. So the coaching staff kind of got fired towards the end of that year, just as I had probably had about 6 or 7 games starting, and sort of become the starter. And then they got fired, and I was like, I hope these new coaches don't come in and just sack me off straight away. But they kind of kept the status quo, and I think I kept playing pretty well, and sort of kept my gig as a starter there for the rest of that season. That kind of springboarded me a bit into that next year down in the championship, where I feel like I really sort of found my groove, and was playing some really good rugby. I got to the point, because it was weird in the UK system. Every league you go down from the Premiership, there's one less player on the bench. That used to be the rule. Right. So because the matchday squad was 22 man in the champ, and then if you go down to Nat 1, it's 21, and they go down because they want people to play more to develop. I guess, I don't know. It's kind of a weird system. So we used to, in that second year I was in the champ, they used to put one prop on the bench, and I'd just play 80 every week. Sure. So I just went from my whole professional career pretty much being off the bench or third string, kind of playing limited minutes, to having like the back half of the season in the Premiership starting, and then I had this whole season in the Championship where I just played so many minutes and was like pretty much every single game I was starting and just logging so many scrums and playing. I played really well that year, and that kind of just really instilled this confidence in me, being like, actually, I can do this set piece thing now. And then we went back up into the Premiership, and then it just kind of kicked on from there. I still had like so many times where I felt like I'd figured it out after that year, and then we got back in the Prem, and there was still so many portions where I was just like, had runs of games where I was just going so poorly, and then I got dropped again. It was just like, you know how it is. Every time you feel like you got it figured out, somebody would come and just smack you in the face, and I'd just be like, oh, I'm back, not getting picked now. And you just got to like stay the course. And it's just been like
roller coaster, isn't it?
I know, yeah, I know. It all culminated in the last month of the highest emotional roller coaster ever.
Was it ever an option for you to go somewhere else? Obviously, you said that you've done the Championship, then you played really well in the Premiership when you got your opportunities, back down to the Championship. Was it ever an option for you to jump ship like I did and not go down to that Championship for another year because you'd already been there?
Probably like I explored it a little bit, but in reality, like I kind of wanted to stick with Irish. They pretty much offered me the same sort of deal I was on to kind of go again, and they wanted to spend the next year or so in the champ really developing me. So I kind of signed that contract, even though we cut the writing was on the wall that first time up in the Prem pretty early. Like we won that first game against Queens, and I don't think we won again until like round 16 or something. We were just getting
against the Quins again,
we beat yes to stay alive mathematically, and then we beat Queens. I don't know how we got the double on them that year. We were pretty average. I'd already kind of signed, and to me, like I didn't really mind. Once again, I didn't really mind going down to the champ, because I still felt like I had so much development to do. Yeah. Because although like I had a few good games in the Premiership, I still knew that I was by no means like a dominant scrummager in the Prem. I could just found a way to kind of hold my own, so then I could let the rest of my game speak for itself. So I still had heaps of development I needed to do. So going down to the Championship wasn't the worst thing for me. Once again, I just kind of used it as a sort of training ground in a way where I was like, I just really focus on scrums, and luckily I played so many minutes that it like helped me develop massively for the next time we went into the Premiership. And then once we got back up there, it was like some games I went pretty well, and then others like I probably, to be honest, that second time I went back into the Prem, I didn't have as good a season as I had when we were in there the first time. I don't know, it was just like every time I feel like I've figured out scrummaging, something comes along or someone comes along that you just like. It always finds a way to humble you. You never can rest on your laurels, because as soon as you think you got it figured out, someone comes and just pops you out the top, and you say, "Oh God, here we go again." And you go back. I had like a lot of mental demons around it too, because I had this like running narrative. I'd been told by so many people and so many coaches that I was a bad scrummager, that even when things were going well, I'd put it down to be like, oh, I'm lucky that it went well. I never like sort of gave myself credit. I'd always be like, I'd go into every game being like, just expecting to get done. And if I didn't, I'd be like, oh, that was lucky. Like, I hope that happens again. Yeah. So like every time I'd have like 5 or 6 good games on the trot, and then I'd have even just one scrum that didn't go my way. My mindset would go straight back to being like, oh God, yeah, here we go. I'm a bad scrummager. Like, we're back. And then that would just like snowball into me having put maybe a couple of bad scrums, into me having a bad game, into me getting dropped, and I'd just be like, oh God. And then the cycle would start again, and I'd be like, okay, I've been dropped now. I've got to really put in time and work and get better. And then I'd start going well again, and then same thing would happen. I'd have a couple of bad scrums, and then I'd just like catastrophize everything in my mind so much. And it was just like so frustrating, because I'd put in so much effort and I wanted it so bad. But I just have this like mental block around my scrummaging where I just like, I hope this doesn't go bad. I hope this doesn't go bad. And every time it went well, I'd be like, okay, it didn't go bad. And then it did. One or two would go up the shitter, and I'd just be like, I'm crap again. And I just have this like running narrative in my mind, which was like a big demon for me to get over, which I only really got over probably, what am I now? Probably like when I was 27, 28, probably that like season that I ended up making the Wallabies. I remember going into pre-season there, we had a full-time sports psych with us at that point, and I worked with, his name's Mike Roberts, and I worked with Mike around trying to shift my mindset around being so results focused. Like I'd be so focused on the outcome of things that would just completely dictate whether I thought I did a good job or not, or whether I was happy or not. So I'd go into every scrum and be like, just focus on I remember, it's just like, it may sound silly, but this is what I'd have this voice in my head. I'd pack down in a scrum, and this is how I'd motivate myself. I'd be like, I'd make fake scenarios in my mind and be like, if I get this scrum right, like if I don't get penalised in this scrum or we go well, I'm gonna play international rugby. That's just like, I'd tell myself that to put pressure on myself to make sure I got this scrum right. And then when it didn't, obviously I'd be like, oh man, I'm done, I'm dust. So I'd had such a negative, bad relationship with the scrum. Like, and it was so weird because I almost viewed scrummaging as a completely different sport to rugby.
Yeah.
Because like being a rugby player around the park was sweet.
You're
like
the best,
I was still like super fit. I'd get through so much work. I'd make all my tackles I'd carry. I'd be sweet. And then I'd just view scrums as a separate entity that I just like put so much pressure on myself because I'd been told for so many years that I was bad at it. I put so much pressure on myself to get it right. And then I work with Mike around becoming more sort of process driven rather than results, and focusing on things that I actually can control. Like, I know you've never been in a scrum, but the reality of it is like essentially eight people have to get their shit right in order for it to function optimally. And sometimes you can do your job 100% right and something else goes wrong, and you're the one who ends up getting dicked, and then you can, as being a tight head, you're kind of like the linchpin of the scrum. So then, like, if scrums go wrong, they're never going to blame the second rowers or whatever. It's always kind of you're like in the focus point of what's going on. I remember the season before this, the last game of the year, I was starting against Wasps. And it was just after COVID, so we just got crowds back in the stands, and I'd like had an up and down season, same sort of thing. I have a couple of good games, and I'd have a couple of bad ones get dropped, work my way back in the team, and I was starting this game against Wasps, last game of the season, and like started the game on fire around the park. Then I got a jackal. I was like Karen making good meters. We're up by like 3 tries in the first 25 minutes, and we had like 4 scrums, and I got penalised every single one of them. Every single one. I remember this bloke called Tom West, who's actually signed for Saracens. I'll be playing with him. He just messed me up, and I was one of those guys I just couldn't figure out, and I got dragged 26 minutes in.
Wow!
Like Decky Kidney just pulled me, and I remember feeling like this big, and I walked off the pitch, and obviously the camera's right in my face, and I was just sitting there like trying to hold
an injury.
Literally, I didn't even go that. I don't know what they say in the comments. Probably like he must be injured or something. But no, I just got like fully just dragged, and I was sitting there with the camera in my face trying to hold it together. And we went in at half time, and Deck was like, "Mate, I just had to do it. I'm sorry, but it is what it is." And once again, I was so frustrated, like so frustrated that I, like in half time, like went to the toilets and just like cried because I was just like, I just can't get this thing right. So then after that, in that off season, I started working with this psych around my scrums because I had such a poor relationship. Like I went and spoke to him, and I remember as I was speaking to him, he's like, "Do you want to go for a walk and chat about stuff?" And I literally just started crying to him about scrums because I was like, I just can't. I'm trying so hard, and I've been told I'm so shit at this for so long. And sometimes I get it and I feel like I can do it, and then I just like have this horrible relationship with him. And he sat me down and we made this like process pyramid is what he called it, and we like put together like the foundations of what a successful scrum looked like for me, and all my answers were like, oh, I get a penalty, or I do this, or it's all results driven, like the outcome. And he was like, let's shift your perspective into what actually you can control every single time, regardless of what goes on. What can you control going into a scrum that the opposition or anyone else has no influence over? And let's make a pyramid of that, and then judge yourself on that, how you went about doing that each scrum, rather than if you got a penalty or you didn't, or you got penalised. Yeah. And that was like I'd never thought about things that way. I'd always been like, it's good, it's black and white, it's good if I get a good outcome, it's bad if I get a bad outcome, and there's no grey area. So we like really focused in on what my mindset was going into each scrum, like little technical things that I can control 100% about foot placement, what I'm focusing on the bind, all that sort of stuff around my mindset, and then everything up to the engagement. We put together this sort of like checklist that I could mentally go through, and if I checked all those things off, and I could generally say that going into the scrum I had an aggressive mindset, and I did this, and this, regardless of what the outcome of the scrum was, I can live with it and move on to the next one. And if I got a good scrum, fine. I didn't get too high. And if I had a bad one, I was like, okay, whatever, I'll move on to the next one. And that was like a real revelation for me, because I'd never thought of it. And it took a little bit of time to like really implement it. And then once I like really started viewing not just scrums, but rugby and life in general like that, it just, everything sort of fell into place for me. And then after we had that in pre-season going into that year, this would have been, last season. So not the season just gone, the season before that, when I just like was flying, mate. It was the best season of my career by a country mile. I started like majority of games. I was, and even when I didn't and the same sort of thing around selection, even when I didn't start and I came off the bench, I'd just be like, whatever. If I play 30 minutes, I play a half. I play 10 minutes. I play 80 minutes. Whatever portion of time I get on the field, I just commit to the same actions and go as hard as possible. And it is what it is. And that just like was an absolute revelation for me. So like, even if I came off the bench, I just played 25 minutes. I'd be like, I'm going ham for this 25 minutes, and I'm committing to the same actions, whether I start, bench, whatever. It's never going to affect my mindset going in. And that just manifested itself into like me easily playing the best season of my career. And then the Wallabies thing came around, which is another complete story in itself, where that came out of complete left field.
Mate, keep going, on fire. I don't have to ask you any questions.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just rambling.
Today.
I'm just rambling.
Awesome.
Yeah, the Wallaby thing came around, which was just like completely out of the blue. Like, we played Sarries the Saturday before that, and we had this ridiculous comeback. And this is one of those games, like, I honestly think it's one of the best games I've ever played in my life, because we were down, I think we're down by like 26 points in the second half, and we had a red card. And I came off the bench, and I don't know, before I came on, I was like, I'm just going to empty the tank. And I think, I'd know for a fact how many carries and stuff I had within this 26 minutes, because I remember looking at it afterwards and being like, something came over me. I had like 17 carries in 26 minutes.
Whoa,
and was just kidding? Just went fucking nuts. I was one of those guys, I was like running over people and stealing the ball. I was like, I'm just getting my hands on the ball every 2 seconds.
But how did the scrums go?
It was all right, mate. We were down to 14. We were down to 14 men, and I think I gave away one free kick, and one of them, I only had 2 scrums, which is probably why it went so well. I only had 2, and I got one free kick, and the other one, the ball was in and out. Because we were like down, when you're down to 7 men, we were just like, get it in, hooker, quick, and go. So it made me going backwards, the ball's already out. But I was just like, I'm just going nuts this game.
Yeah.
So like, we had this mad comeback, and we came from 26 points down with like 30 minutes to go, and we ended up drawing with the last kick of the game. Shit. Unreal. And so like, I was on a high from that, and the next day, like, off the field, I'm like a massive nerd. So I play Dungeons and Dragons with these guys every week, like, massive nerd. We role play, and I'm like rolling dice, and I'm like we're just enormous nerds. So I was literally at my mate's place playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Dungeons and Dragons, how good's that? How does that actually go? Is that game they play on that movie? Like, do you dress up and?
I don't dress up. Some people do. We don't dress up, but you're fully in character and stuff. Like, I've got a character that I play, and he's got a completely separate personality, and you role play, and you're in this other world and stuff, and it's like the polar opposite to footy. That's what I'm saying. Like, I have these like two identities. I've got like the rugby player, and then off the field I'm just completely different, which, as I said, like, it's helped me so much in terms of footy, because I can just completely disconnect from rugby outside of work. And I'm lucky, like, my wife doesn't really like rugby or want anything to do with it, like, so I don't come home and she's not asking me 1,000 questions, so I can just kind of completely disconnect.
Does she play Dungeons and Dragons?
She does. I've got her into it now, mate.
Oh.
Yes. So I run a game where she's involved now. So I've never been more attracted to my wife in my life, when she rolled those dice, and I was like, let's go, be a nerd with me.
I'm gonna have to look into that. I might have to take it up. Dungeons and Dragons sounds like a hell of a Sunday event.
Mate, unreal. So this was the best Dungeons & Dragons session I've ever had. So I was literally mid-session, like, just being... I'm a little, like... My character in D&D is this little halfling, so he's like a little hobbit, essentially. So I'm just running around being this little hobbit, doing my thing. And my phone kept buzzing in my pocket, and we have, like, a no-phones policy when we're playing. And it just kept buzzing, and I was like, sorry, I need to check it. And it was Petrus Duplessis, who was, like, the Wallabies scrum coach, and we obviously played with. And he was like Instagram messaging me being like, oh mate, how do you want to just give me a ring when you have some time?
Sorry mate, playing bloody Dungeons and Dragons.
Sorry mate,
call you tomorrow.
Can't get to you right now. Yeah. So I was watching the Wallabies play earlier that day. They played Scotland, and I saw Alan Alatoa and Taniela both get injured in that game. But I've never spoken to the Wallabies once in my whole life. I've never had any contact with any coach, nothing. And I was like, I knew the laws had changed because of COVID. They changed the laws where they could pick overseas player. But they'd never contacted me or anything. So I was like, oh, Para must just like... They're obviously playing England next week. Once they come to London, probably wants to catch up for a beer or whatever and just see what's up. And so we had a break in our session. I went to the other room and was like, and gave Petrus a call. And he was just like... how are you, mate? Yeah, see you going really well for Irish this year. We need you in Wallabies camp tomorrow. And I was just like, excuse me? Is this a proper G up or something? And yeah, he literally was like, yeah, both the boys have come down. We didn't bring a third tight head on tour because we always like had you in mind as if shit hit the fan over here, we'd just call you up. And I was like, well, you could have... No, thanks for letting me know. Thanks for letting me know, mate. I had no idea. So I literally like got that phone call and was like literally like having a physical, like my body went numb as I was talking to him. I was like, keeping it cool. I was like, oh, mate, yeah, that'd be awesome. Like, sounds good. Can't wait. He was like, yeah, I just got to get some things checked off. I'll let you know in the morning if we need you. But I was like, we're pretty certain that we're gonna need you for this week, even if you don't play. Like, just come in and train with the boys and do it. And I was like, that's awesome. Let's go. So like, I was like so rattled. Just that I had to go in and we cut the session short. Our D&D session was cut short, which is blasphemous. But I was like, guys, I actually can't play right now. Like, I'm just like so overwhelmed. And I like was walking home, called the wife, told her I was up, woke my mum up and my dad up because they live in Malaysia. Yeah. My parents live in Kuala Lumpur, so it was like a big time difference. And I like woke my dad up and was like, Dad, I could be going to Wallabies camp tomorrow. And he was like, get fucked, because he was like, to be honest, like, because I've been English qualified, like over here I thought the only chance of me playing international was if I got picked for England. So I was like, I told Dan, he's like, you got picked for England, because my dad's English. He was like so excited, and I was like, no, the Wallabies want me to go camp. He was like, oh, well, that's awesome too there, good. I was like, yeah, thanks, Dad. So the next day I just went to training with Irish, like, because I hadn't had anything confirmed. They'd obviously contacted the coach and said there's a chance I might be going to camp. So I just went to training with Irish, and I was in the middle of a gym session, and Kissy, our head coach, came in and was like, yeah, mate, they want you at the Lensbury, which is just down the road in Teddington. Want you to go to the Lensbury and go into camp. And I was like, oh, Jesus, this is actually happening. And same sort of thing, like I just like walked out the middle of the gym session and was like, on the way to the car, the team site came over and we were meant to have a catch up, and I told him what's going on. And once again, I know with him, I have such a good relationship with Mike. I felt so comfortable. I was talking to him about it, and just once again, I just got so emotional. I was like, oh my God, this might actually be happening. And I chatted to him, and then just I hopped in the car and drove to the team hotel. I was in full London Irish stash, had no kit, nothing, and just like rocked up and just like kind of went to the Lensbury and like went to the room, and there was a few of the boys there, and I was like, I don't know who I'm meant to speak to or anything. And then like the team manager came over and like gave me a room key and was like, yeah, we need you for the week. And I had to drive home and get clothes and stuff. I literally had nothing on me, so I had to drive home, and then I was with them for the week, and they had like a really short training week because they were right at the end of the season. Obviously, that spring tour they do at the end of the year, they've played so many games, and boys were battered. So I think they played on the Sunday, and it was a 6-day turnaround to the England game. So they weren't training like the Monday. I think there was like just a walkthrough on the Tuesday. Then we train Wednesday or Thursday, I think. And then like Wednesday morning we had a meeting. And they just announced the team, and I was on the bench. And I was just like, this, once again, no, they didn't. They kind of told me that, like, I think either Alan or Taniela would be. I'd only play if both of them were out, because if only one of them is out, they're going to move Slipper to cover tight head from loose head, and then that one of them will be on the bench. And both of them were kind of like, yeah, I think one of us will be right. They both got concussions, so they both went through HIAs and that sort of stuff. And none of them, I didn't get told before this meeting once again that I was in with a shot. And they just like read this team out, like number 18, Ollie Hoskins, and I was just like, oh my Lord. I went from 48 hours before, never talking to the Wallabies before in my life, to getting picked to play against England. And I was just like, this video went out, and I was just like, was sitting there, and you see I hold it together for a bit, I like clap, and I'm like, and then I just like I was just like, waterworks in the team meeting. And these guys are looking at me, and I'm sitting there like trying to like hold it together, and I've got tears streaming down my face. Just like, this is like the most wild 48 hours of my life. Yeah. And then I just like went through the week, and like the stars couldn't have aligned anymore. Like, obviously, playing at Twickenham is literally a home game for me. Yeah. Like I live in Richmond, like 10 minutes up the road. So like and also my mum happened to be in the country at the time as well. Like she was over visiting her folks. So like everything just lined up, and then I went on and came off the bench, and I played like 13 minutes off the bench, and it literally felt like it was done in 2. It was just like in this trance. And the same sort of thing, we were lining it, and I ran out onto the pitch after warm up and stuff. We like, my whole body was like tingling. We lined up to do the national anthem, and I like looked directly across from me was my mum, my wife, and my dad flew in that morning from Kuala Lumpur, and I saw him, and they were all there, and I was just like crying again, singing the national anthem. I was like, I'm just gonna be known as the cry guy or whatever, because I'm just like, this whole week has been like so many tears. And they've just gone like viral on socials and stuff. So I had like thousands of messages from people. It was just like so overwhelming. And then that 13 minutes went by like that. I think I made a couple of tackles, and then just like had a couple of scrums, which went all right. And I was like, okay, this is like, and it was just over. And I was like, oh damn, that was so amazing. The build up was so incredible, and the game went so quick. I was just like, oh damn, that's like, I guess that's my Wallaby career done. Like, bang.
And haven't heard from them since.
No, it's not really. They kept me on for they kept me on for another week when we went to Wales. But both of the other boys passed HRs, but I stayed on just in case, and like trained with them and stuff, and was away with them for that week in Wales, and then kind of said thanks, went our separate ways, and never spoken to any Wallaby people again. Pretty much.
It blows my mind. That is crazy, eh? What an international experience,
mate. It's like the shortest, most intense week of my life, and then it's just like, thank you for your service. Cheers, mate. Here's your matchy. See you later.
Crazy, but it was always a massive dream of yours too. I think I saw an old message of you. Put up from one of your mates is saying that you were going to be a Wallaby, or it's just
it was dream. It was during that message I sent my brother it during COVID. And I was like I was in the middle of lockdown. I was just flogging myself, just like had this like renewed energy, being like, I've always wanted to play international rugby. I remember telling my dad when I was like 5 years old, being like, I want to play for the Wallabies, and I was just like, always been my goal to play a test match. And moving over here, like, I thought the only realistic chance was because of the Wallabies, because of the laws in Australia. I was like, if I'm going to happen, it's going to be for England. And once again, like, I was too inconsistent over here. I'd only really had one, that last season of where I got picked for the Wallabies, where I was like consistently like one of the best tight ends in the Prem, playing really, really well for like a long period of time. So I never got a sniff at England, and I was just like frustrated in the middle of COVID. And I remember texting my brother being like, I'm going to make this happen. I was like, I'm just going to go hard for the next 2 years. I think I said I'm going to go ham for the next 2 years to my brother in this text, and I'm going to play test match rugby. And at the time I thought that, because I didn't think I was allowed to get picked for the Wallabies, I was like, it's going to be I'm going to play test match, whether it be for England or whoever. And then literally 9 months later, or like it was a bit more, it was like a year and a half later, I think, then this happened, and I was just like, weird manifestation. It's probably a coincidence or whatever, but I'm going to put it down to I manifested that shit. Like I believed it and brought it into reality. It was just like a little flash in the pan sort of thing. But yeah, as I said, I got the cap, I got the number. Like I'm Wallaby 949, even if it was for 13 minutes. But I'm always be a Wallaby, which is pretty incredible when you think about it now.
Mate, so cool. So you a chance to play Rugby World Cup? Are you selectable? Like, how does that work?
No,
so they've be in the country still.
Yeah, so you have to. They've changed the laws where they can pick 3 overseas players, but you have to have 30 caps. So they're gonna. I imagine they'll pick Samu.
Not 30 seconds.
Not 13 minutes. Unfortunately, if it was 13 minutes, 30 minutes, I still wouldn't have qualified. But 13, I would be flying. So I think they're probably gonna pick Samu and Quaid, and then probably Korobete or someone like that. I'd imagine. I think they've got a little bit more pedigree than me, unfortunately.
Oh well, one day though, because you're still so young for a prop, really, aren't you? You've spoken about like Petrus Duplessis, who was scrumming at about 39. We've just had John Afoa join us at the age of 39. So
he's still kicking
you've
around.
still got plenty of years left.
I know, and I played with Augustin Creevy this year, and Gussie's like 38 and still running around like a spring chicken, doing all this thing.
That old? Wow.
Yeah, mate. Right. Gussie's he's going to go to his 4th World Cup.
Far out. That's an achievement.
Ridiculous. Yeah, he's so there is hope for me that I've still got quite a few years left, and my body's feeling pretty good. Touch wood that everything stays fit. Like I still want to kick around for a while, so I'm not, as I said, like got this next 2 years at Sarries, and then we'll see what happens after that. Like I'm not ruling out the fact that I've played my last Test match, so we'll see what happens, mate.
Mate, exciting times ahead. And what about life after footy? Is it Dungeons and Dragons or?
Oh, imagine!
What's the dream? Is that professional, by the way? Can you play that? Can you get paid to play that?
There are people who make a lot of money on it. If you go on YouTube, there are people who like stream it and stuff and get millions of views and make absolute squillions.
Is that the post-footy dream?
Oh, mate, if I could play D&D for a living, that'd be unbelievable. Well, the guys I play with over here, they have a company that they've written a book for D&D, and they're going to go full time into that sort of space. So maybe the dream is to like go with them and just be a full time nerd after footy.
Mate, that'd be cool.
Yeah. To be honest, what I want to do after rugby, I don't fully know. I've got a degree in psychology and counselling.
Oh, true.
Now I'm older, I don't know. I definitely don't want to be a counsellor, to be honest. You get a bit more cynical as you get older. But no, honestly, just like, I don't know, the older I've got, the more I like to just kind of prioritise my energy into like things that really matter and people that really matter to me. So I just feel like I'd be so drained if I had to take on and like everyone else's sort of problems. Not like I'd have a newfound respect for even doing doing my degree and stuff. Like being a full-time mental health person is like it takes a toll on you just as much as the other people, because you're just vicariously taking on everyone else's stuff. So I actually don't know if I got that in me, but I think it's taught me a lot of stuff about how to relate to people, and it's got a lot of transferable skills. So you know that like being a professional sportsman, like it's the ultimate team environment. So like any sort of industry, I feel like where you have a group of people working towards any sort of goal, pro sports plus psychology and that sort of stuff sort of sets you up perfectly for that, because as you know, this has taught me, you have to be fucking adaptable to be a pro footy player. You got to take feed. You're getting judged every action you do at work every day is being, you're the one doing the judging now, but like you're auditioning every single day for your job, for your selection, all that sort of stuff. So like I'm great at taking feedback, all that sort of stuff. So I'd imagine whatever I end up going into, I'll figure it out. Or my wife's yoga will pop off and I'll be a stay-at-home dad. And I'm pretty, we don't want those traditional gender roles, man. I'm happy with being a stay-at-home dad and letting her bring home the bacon after footy.
Mate, with that degree, you're pretty sorted, I'd imagine. You'll have plenty of opportunities.
We'll figure it out.
Coming your way. And plenty of time in your footy career to go before then as well. But, as always, we've gone to our Instagram for some questions, and plenty came in for you. Plenty of good ones too. So we'll try and get through a few of these. First one, best sledge you've been on the end of. No one's sledging you, sure.
No, this is a story I told recently, actually. I'll tell it again. Against your lot, the Crusaders.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah, my first year of Super Rugby, I was like just turned 21. We were playing the Crusaders in Christchurch, and I came off the bench. and there was about 20 minutes to go, and we had a yellow card in the second row. So I had a flanker behind me in the row, and he had molded sole boots on. And our front row was Francois Van Wyk, who plays for Leicester now. Heath Tessman, who's like a bit of a older veteran, and me, and I was like 21. And the front row that Crusaders had out was I was against Wyatt Crockett. And then they had Corey Flynn at hooker and Owen Franks at tight head. So like, and I had a flanker behind me and like little nipple studs. And we were like, we've had these. It's like the worst nightmare for a tight end ever. Like any prop, it's so bad. And they had scrums 5 meters out from our try line. And the first one, they pretty much almost got a pen try, but they managed to I think they knocked it on, and then they reset, had another one. I went down straight away in the second one because I was just under so much pressure. Yeah. And then it got penalty again. And then the third one, White Crocker got under me and he lifted me off the ground. And as I was up in the air, he goes, "Take your medicine, boy." And I was like, "Oh, please, sir, please." And he just like lifted me up, and they pushed us over for a penalty try. And I was just like, another one of those games where I felt like this big. And I came off the pitch just being like, "Oh my God, I think I want to retire." I felt so embarrassed. And he just like looked at me and said, "Take your medicine, boy." And I looked at their front row, and it was like, all of them had like 100 All Blacks caps. And I'm just a little kid who's just like played like 5 Super Rugby games, getting absolutely wrecked. I'll never forget him telling me that. That's the best legend I've ever had.
Oh, mate, no wonder you're mentally scarred from the drums. You've got all this trauma.
It started with Wyatt Crockett absolutely melting me in Christchurch.
Oh, mate, that is a yarn. That is a good one.
Yeah.
So, did you ever wish you'd never made the transition into the front row? Like, obviously, you're a loosie. I feel like you're a loosie at heart. Hearing your stories, like you're good around the field. You got all the skills, tackles, carries, and then for some reason you're put into this front row, which you hate, and you've got mental issues around it.
For the first until probably 3 or 4 years ago, I cursed it every day. I cursed it because it was just like the bane. Scrums were literally just the bane of my existence because everything else would go so good and scrums would go bad, and I would just catastrophize it, and I would just be so annoyed all the time. But now I look back on it, like knowing where I am now and the business of rugby, tight end's a specialist position, and I tell you, if this had happened now, probably like what's happened with Irish the last couple of weeks, and I was playing number 8. It'd be way harder for me to find a job than it is right now as a tight head. Like if you're a good tight head, you can play a long time, as you've seen, and it's an in demand skill, and it's the reason it's in demand because it's fucking hard, man. It's so hard, and it's just one of those skills that you'll never quite master, and. So I'm glad I have now, but there's so many times I've cursed it. Like I remember the man it was my old academy coach called Matt Tink, and Tinky was like one day he's like, because I was like 120 kilos when I was like 16. I was just massive.
True. Yeah.
So he was just like, and back then I was playing number 8, and I could literally just like run over everybody. And before schoolboys, I think I was 17 when I played like West Australian schoolboys. He was like, "We're going to move you to tight end and just give it a shot." And back then I could do it because I was like 120 kegs playing against 80 kilo kids and just like monstering them. But that was Tinky. Thank you now, but I've cursed his name many a time.
Oh, that is good stuff. Okay, next one. Best pre-match talk he remembers.
Pre-match talk. Our captain this year, Matt Rogerson, he's honestly one of the best leaders and talkers that I've ever been a part of. He's just one of those guys that like he plays in such like in a way that just like garners respect. He does all the shitters. Like he doesn't get any accolades for anything. He's a 6 who just runs headfirst in the thing, will hit like 500 rucks and make 35 tackles and have no highlights. Yeah. But he's just like such an awesome player, and he as a leader would just like, he's a northerner, so he'd get up and he'd talk in front of the team and be like, discipline and fucking Get up in their faces, you bastards. Yeah, he was just like, and it was just, I don't know, every time Rog spoke, he just like, everyone was just locked in, and he could just like, it was almost like listening to Jon Snow in Game of Thrones. He'd just like inspire the troops to go. So I can't remember a specific pre-match speech that he did, but just there's so many this year where he just chats. You know, you've had a few, a lot of the times when there's like pre-match talks and stuff, you're just kind of like, okay, whatever. But every time Rog spoke, you just be like, get this inspiration. So yeah, Matt Rogerson is a hell of a leader.
Oh, what a legend! Love that. Okay, next one, loosest unit at London Irish on the piss. Oh, mate,
loosey goosey. Back in our time,
there's
a few. Gilly was good, wasn't he? God.
Yeah,
Connor Gilson, and he's
a lad.
Absolute lad, and he was so good. Were you there? Had you left by the time he organised that pre-season trip when we were meant to just have like a court session and stuff, and he bought everyone tickets to this festival and just hopped us on a bus, and no one knew where we were going, and we were all dressed up, and we just got off at this like massive music festival. We had no idea. I think that was after you left. Like Gilly was some of the best times on the drank. I did a few trips with him, like we went to Prague once, which was just like absolute send it. And he just he was head of the social committee when he was here. So Gilly was great crack, and then Jack Cook. Do you remember Cookie? He was a young
Cookie.
boy. Yeah, Cookie is still around until this year. He was still like our social. He took over from Gilly after Gilly left. And yeah, Cookie was great value on the drink. Always dressed up always cross-dressed. Every single theme, he'd find a way to somehow wear a dress or something, dress up as a chick. It was just fantastic.
Like, was it on a social that you met your wife?
You were there.
Story?
You were there the night I met my wife.
Was I?
Remember at the end of our first preseason, we went to Swansea.
Yeah.
On that big piss up, and she was the nightclub we went to. She managed that nightclub.
Far out.
And we went to that dinner before where we were just blind. Remember, we got kicked out of that restaurant because there was those big wooden beams and boys like doing chin ups on the roof and swinging, and just like we were so pissed. And I literally I can't fully remember the first interaction I had with my now wife because I was just like sideways. And the bar we went to, it was called Peppermint, and it was like a Wednesday night. I think we were there. And they were doing that rock, paper, scissors thing with the bartenders. I don't know if you remember. And you go there, and any drinks order you do, if you pay rock, paper, scissors, and if you win, you get double.
Oh, true.
Boys like Will Lloyd and stuff were going, give me like 20 vodka Red Bulls, and we'd like win, and we get a thing of 40. And boys were just absolutely. So I was sideways when we first met. And this is actually one of my marriage hinged on this one act here, because her mate came over and was like, oh, what do you think about her? And I literally couldn't even see her. I was like, oh yeah, she's hot, let's go. And then she was like walking around. She was stone cold sober, but she was working. She was walking around doing stuff around the nightclub, and I saw her walk past me, and this is drunken Oliver. This could have ended my marriage before it started. I stuck my foot out and intentionally tripped her up, but then I caught her. This is like this. If I'd not caught her, she would look at me like, this guy is an absolute wanker. Never talk to me again. But I caught her and grabbed her and started dancing with her mid thing, and I was blind, and somehow that worked. And then look at us. 7 years on, we've been married for 2 years.
Wow, mate, that's like another movie you could make. It's
I
like
know.
a dirty dancing scene, tripping them up and
literally. I wish there was some hidden camera or something I could see that night again, because all of us were so pissed, and she was stone cold sober, and somehow it worked out. And then she started. Then we just we did that. That was in August, and then by January she moved to London. We were living together.
Wow, one of the great love stories.
Yeah, I know. It's so romantic, isn't it?
so good. Okay, next one. Best honey badger memory. A few honey badger fans in the world, isn't there?
Camo. What a man. Badge, yeah. He's just so many one-liners from that bloke. And the thing is, like, the stuff he did on camera wasn't like a media persona or whatever. He's genuinely like that off the field too. Yeah. Just like such a free spirit and so rogue. I remember probably my favourite memory with Camo is we had this one plane trip. I think we were going over to New Zealand to play someone. I can't remember. And he gave me this book about like like people having previous lives, and it was about how past life therapy and people who are like go into these meditative states, you can remember past lives they've lived. And he gave me this book and was going off this, like, he's quite like a spiritual guy and going off this like rant about how we all have lived past lives and our souls every time have like upgraded and all this sort of stuff. And it was actually a fascinating book. I read it. It was actually really good. So yeah, he was. That's one of my core memories of the badge. And then also, like, he's just one of those players who just like run like literally face first into everything. Yeah. Like, was not the most skillful player or anything, but he was just like built on just being a little wired differently and going so hard all the time.
Right, sounds like an absolute lad. The Honey Badger. Lots of fans out there. Okay, next one. What's one thing you'd like to see changed in rugby?
One thing I'd like to see changed. I don't think there's nothing wrong with the product of rugby at all. I think it's such an entertaining game, whether it's a premiership, super rugby, anything. The game's like, when you actually sit down and watch the games, the skill and the product is amazing. I'd love to see the mentality around players being able to market themselves and promote themselves change a bit. I feel like, it is why I think NRL back home and in New Zealand is so popular, why NBA, why American sports, all this sort of stuff, why like the Premier League over here, all the football stuff is so popular, is that those guys are allowed to kind of have this unique personality and really have this unique flair and promote themselves, whether it be through like celebrations or stuff on TikTok or whatever, just the way the world is now. And that also carries over into the crowd. Like, this is the UK thing. Like, I love how I was watching the Super the other week, and when the kicker was kicking, the Chiefs fans were like ringing their bells and trying to distract him, but all that sort of stuff. I reckon that's awesome. Whereas here, the thing comes on and it's like you're not allowed to speak when the guy's doing a thing. You watch the NBA, guys are shooting free throws and people are waving stuff, like just doing everything to distract him. It like engages the crowd into the game. Like, I don't mind a bit of sledging, all that sort of stuff, and it's so frowned upon in rugby. And also, if you like celebrate too much after scoring, or you've got some like too much flair, that sort of stuff, it's very much still like an archaic sort of team first. No, don't put yourself above the team ever, or like show too much. Otherwise, you kind of get vilified a bit, especially over here. I think it's developing in New Zealand a lot better.
Slowly.
Yeah. But I feel like that whole mindset has to change, because that's going to bring a younger audience into the game and show them like, as I said, the product is so good that if they could just allow players to market themselves and therefore vicariously market the game to this younger audience, then I think that will sort so much out, and allowing the crowd to get involved and sledge and have a bit more of like a tribal feel around things. It's so black and white and a straight up and down sort of thing that I feel like it hasn't evolved as other sports have and really captured like a grasp on the marketplace, where rugby's kind of fallen off a little bit, which is a bit of a shame.
Yeah, I like that, and you're in the right position to change it, mate. Let's see some try celebrations. I've got
to score some first, mate. I've got to score some. Oh, God.
Fair enough. Okay, 2 more questions. What is your dream lid? If you could choose any haircut, what would it be?
Not the one I got right now, mate. I tell you that much. I'm bald as anything, and I haven't shaved in like 2 weeks, so I got a lot of peach fuzz going on right now. Like, look how fuzzy this is. Real nice. Bad. Hence why the hat's on. I had a dream lid. God, I held onto my hair way too long. I used to cop so much shit when I was at the force, because like I started losing my hair when I was like 2021, and you see, it's so funny. I watch myself. Like any footage of me playing Super Rugby back in the day, that top end camera angle's not very forgiving. When you're sweaty as well and you got thin hair, and every scrum, every time I do something, you get up and you see me doing this, combing it over, just combing my hair over all the time. I was so self-conscious of it. Oh mate, I wouldn't mind just knowing the feeling of having some long locks once, just like having like a man bun or something. I just feel like for a bald man, the thought of having like a man bun is just so foreign that I'd love to just, if I could just pop up tomorrow and just have like long flowing locks even for a bit. I think that would just be so nice. At least you got the choice, you can choose. If you want to go bald, you can, but you have the choice of various. I'm stuck with either completely shaven or the old man sort of ring around the sides, and that's about it.
Mate, you'd look good with some long locks. I can see it. Blonde? Were you blonde?
Yeah, I was like a
you were
mousy
blonde.
brown sort of blondie
Long
back in the day.
blonde locks.
Like, honestly, no one over here has known me with hair, so they look at old pictures of me with like the comb over and stuff, and they're just like, "Oh my god, who is this bloke?" I'm lucky my wife likes thick bald man, otherwise I'd be in trouble.
Yeah, mate, you do
Niche
suit
market.
ball, to be fair. You're on fire. Okay, last question. Best piece of advice you have for a Woodland listener?
I think I'll harp back to what I said before. Try experience a multitude of things. Don't pigeon your self-identity into one basket. Even if you've got something that you're super passionate about and you love and you want to put majority of your energy into it, 100%. That's one of the main reasons I've been successful in rugby, is because, especially in the younger years, I was obsessed. Like, especially before I made professional, when I was in like the academies and stuff, I was like unhealthily obsessed with rugby. I'd literally go to school, train, I come home. I literally didn't have a cheat meal or like anything I considered to be bad food for like 5 years straight, because I didn't have I refused to have a alcoholic drink before I was 18. I remember on Christmas, like my family and stuff, I knew that like I refused to eat chocolate or anything, and they'd literally buy me protein bars because I'll be like, yeah, I don't want anything. I was so manic about being a pro rugby player, which obviously paid off, but at the same time, I'd neglected so much fun experiences in my youth. Like after we finished year 12 exams, I'm sure you have the same sort of thing in New Zealand. We do this thing called levers, where all the people who've recently graduated, we go to an island off the coast of WA called Rottnest, and everyone's just parties for a week or whatever. I didn't go because I didn't. They had like 2 academy training sessions. I was like, I can't miss these training sessions, and like all these core experiences when I was younger that I just didn't do, because I thought in my mind, I'm like, if I didn't do these things, I wasn't going to make it, or I'd make it. They'd be like, oh, I bet the guys I'm competing with are off partying at levers now. I'm going to go and do this one academy session. Is going to make all the difference in my career. When obviously that mindset has helped me be really disciplined, but I put all my eggs in one basket, and that also led to me catastrophizing shit when it went wrong, like my scrums and stuff, because I was just so rugby focused all the time. And really, when the last 2 or 3 years, when I've let a little bit of the grip on the rope go, and I've just relaxed a little bit and approached it with a bit more of a mindset around going into it to have like enjoying myself playing, not putting so much pressure on myself, and having a great support group and stuff outside of rugby, like being a nerd and playing D&D and like having all these other aspects to my life. Once I've done that, my rugby is actually improved tenfold, because I don't catastrophize things and put so much pressure on myself, which in turn has actually helped me. So whether it's rugby or anything in life, find what you're passionate about, but also make sure you have lots of aspects to your self-identity, because when one thing goes wrong, like it has in the last month, you'll have other legs of the chair to kind of prop yourself up on and realize that if you got a good family and you got good friends and you got good relationships and you got things you enjoy, hobbies and stuff, that if shit goes tits up professionally, then you've got other things to kind of fall back on.
Mate, what a piece of advice.
There you
and
go.
what an insight into your mindset, especially as a young kid. Like that's really fascinating hearing how committed you were to the cause, and
unhealthily obsessed, I'd say, looking back on it now. But I mean, it worked. If it didn't work out, I don't know what I would have done, but it did, luckily. Yeah.
Mate, yes, so interesting. It's been an awesome podcast. Really appreciate you coming on and giving us insight into not only your mindset, what's happened with London Irish, but your career as well. It's been really interesting to hear it from your side of the view, and I'm looking forward to obviously following your journey for the next sort of 10 years as you continue your journey as a front rower, firstly at Saracens and then wherever you end up, but and probably finishing with a bit of D&D to professional D&D to finish, mate. I'm looking forward to.
That's the dream.
I'm literally gonna go YouTube a little bit of that now and see what it's all about.
There's a rabbit hole, mate. Don't get too involved, otherwise you may have to. You'll be neglecting your family with the amount of time you've got to put into it. It's a part-time gig.
But do appreciate you coming on the podcast, mate. Giving up your time. You're an absolute lad.
Thanks, brother.